Man, I got nothing for this month. I don't have any idea what I'm going to do. I've been doing anything besides working on commissions or drawing porn. I don't have anything really to talk about or anything to react to. Is there anything happening? Oh, okay then. Yeah. 2.2 million. Gigantic. Oh, okay. Yes. Yes. I know what to do here. I definitely let's do this. Let's do her. Anyway, hello everyone. This is MOJODraws. I am the titular Mojo, and this is episode 6 for January 2021. A little late, unfortunately, but I'm a wreck of a person, so fuck you. We're hopping on the topical bandwagon this month and drawing the current horny meme that is, I guess, trending or whatever. A tall vampire lady. They dropped some trailers or content or whatever for Resident Evil 8. I know that there's that maiden demo that's exclusive on PS5 right now. If you have one of those, you can go play it. It's a visual showcase or something. Like, it's 20 minutes, really short. But it ends effectively with a tall vampire lady grabbing you, doing some Freddy Krueger shit, and it's like, okay, you know. And there was another trailer where she picks you up, or what is it? She picks you up or something, and it's like, ooh, big lady, or, you know. Yeah. And she also has she has very large breasts, and so people like her. Interesting, yes. I'm betting she definitely will be a fan favorite for time to come. But seriously, it's funny to me because the groups I run in, you know, there's usually a sort of set of popular characters to draw in such horny fashion. And it's occasionally one sort of rises up and, you know, trends for a little bit or whatever, usually coinciding with like a game release, movie release, some sort of content or whatever. Like when Animal Crossing comes out, the Isabel, the little yellow dog secretary thing, people will draw a lot of her. When that Hell of a Boss, whatever that is, there's some sort of wolf girl in that. I don't know if it's a character or whatever, you know. When that comes out or whenever they do a new episode of that, you know, there's lots of new art of her or whatever. And don't think too hard how about those are both two anthropomorphic examples. Don't think too hard about that. But for this one, it's a human-esque thing or whatever, and it's humorous to me because it's since it is more human, so it's more acceptable to be sort of horny about it. It's funny. I'm seeing like YouTube videos that are just like her sort of reveal or whatever, and they'll have like hundreds of thousands of views, and it'll just be the clip of the trailer or whatever. And just she'll be there, they'll freeze frame, and there'll be some sort of meme reaction or whatever. You know, they zoom in on her enormous chest or whatever. It's humorous to me. Just to see people flip their shit over it. You know, and I don't even know if people are really flipping their shit. You know, I don't know how much if it's like self-aware. I don't know. I think people can be unironically horny, you know, and stuff like that. I haven't made any serious attempts to find I won't talk about that. But it's interesting, you know. I'm not it's another aspect of it is, and I don't know why. I don't know if this was just something that happened naturally or whatever. It probably was, but when I first started doing stuff online, I found certain success sort of pushing the MILF angle with my pinup works and arts and things like that. I don't know why. That's just how it happened. I think it's because there was association between that and being like thick, which lends itself to being sort of naturally chubby, and you're just more voluptuous at that point. I don't know. And I think there's this idea that if you're like a mom or something, you gain like a mom body type, like a fucking Pixar, like a Mrs. Incredible or something like that. Like your hip bones just increase or something, and you get more hourglass for whatever reason. Who knows? It's just some sort of horny logic that just exists, and people just run with it. Basically, they don't ask too many questions when they're doing it. And so, I mean, it's interesting to see that sort of pervade more people's mindsets, and for this to sort of take off or whatever. It's interesting. I'm not quite sure what she's going to be in the game. I guess she looks just to be like a villain or something. There's a scene where she's like talking to someone on the phone, and she sounds like she's reporting back to them, so she's probably not going to be the main bad or whatever. I've heard some talk that she's like the chaser enemy, like the Mr. X or whatever. Or I guess since Resident Evil 8 continues the first person perspective thing, the first person gameplay, she'd be more like Jack Baker, you know, when he's chasing after you or something like that. Her name is, and I'm going to attempt to pronounce this, Alcina Dimitrescu or something like that. I'm assuming this game takes place in some Eastern European thing or whatever. There's castles and shit. She's a vampire. I don't know. I haven't seen anything actually relating that back to her. Like her daughters or whatever. They like turn into like bug swarms or something to move around. And, you know, they're smeared with blood and they cackle and kill you or something. I'm not sure what that's all about. You know, I haven't looked that hard into it because, I mean, I'm assuming this game is like months, maybe at the end of the year or something. I don't know. So why should I care about it? You know, I used to be able to maintain a hype boner for much longer, but in my own age, I don't have that sort of endurance anymore. So I'm effectively not paying attention to it for quite a while. Even more so considering that the only sort of playable content for the game out right now is sort of locked in the PS5. I think there's a demo coming out that's for all platforms or something. I don't know what that means. I don't know why Sony would put something like this on PC, because I think they would be wanting to sell the absolute shit out of PS5s. So I don't know. I'm figuring she's just going to be sort of a chaser enemy until you beat her in the game or something like that. So it's fine. It's fine. I should have said this earlier, so it's not really applicable right now, but I don't often draw humans. It's not really something I do a lot. So there's going to be a long period, maybe more so in the beginning of this video, where this sort of doesn't look like anything remotely towards a human. I don't have a lot of experience drawing humans, so I don't know sort of common moves on how to do it. So what I have to end up doing is every time I do, on these rare occasions, draw something that's more human-esque instead of the degenerate anthro stuff I usually do, I have to spend quite a while sort of figuring out how to do it. What sort of moves am I going to make? And with human faces, it's one of those things where you can't fuck up too much on it, because it is very obvious that you have fucked up. And it is very noticeable, and it's very distracting. That's why people typically do very cartoony stuff, or they go anime. You know, there's some sort of style language that's very prevalent and common, which is, you know, cartoons and anime. So let's fall back on that. You know, with the character designs I did for the Oni Plays crew and whatever, they're pretty cartoony. You know, it's nose, eyes, and then you just construe those around to match whatever sort of expression or tone you're trying to make, and it's sort of easy. Same with anime, you know, everyone understands anime. You know, there's no nose unless it's like 90s or they're drawing an American or whatever. It's just a style, and I don't really have a style for drawing humans other than literally going all in and drawing a portrait, you know, drawing all the little creases and things like that. And another thing is, since this is, I'm assuming this lady is supposed to be older or something, you know. Dimitrescu, tall vampire lady, is more of a MILF, so like, I guess 40, 50, something like that, late 30s. I don't know the correct numbers. I don't think there really is any sort of correct numbers for these things. But when you're drawing older ladies, you can't, like, it's hard to maintain in the sort of middle. It's easy just to draw a girl and have her look young. And it's easy to draw an old hag. Because with an old hag or older people or whatever, you just put lines all over their face because old people were covered in wrinkles, and sort of that's understood in a very direct sense. And with young people, they don't have any lines on their face, so they're young. That's understood. With someone who is supposed to be slightly older, even if you put like the smallest mark around their nose or the corners of their mouths, they look older almost instantly, which is very frustrating. And that's because putting lines on the face, you're making a very serious point with a line, because a line is sort of a separation of light and shadow, of dark and light. So any line you put down is going to be interpreted as a very harsh change in the geometry of the face. And so that's why you have to sort of build it up over time with hatching or some sort of shading to show that there's this more smooth transition. And I typically do that with hatching or something like that. But for this, like, I didn't want to draw a portraiture of her because I didn't consider her, like, her actual, like, photo design is like, I mean, she looks all right. I don't think she looks hot in that sense, like of her face, but no one's looking at her face. They're looking at other things. So I had to figure out how to make this look good without making a portraiture or something. So it's like, that's why I have to spend so much time, like, how many lines do I want to put around the mouth to sort of make her look old? How many lines do I want to put over her eyes to sort of convey like a sort of semi-seductive, crazy look or something like that? And it takes a while, and I'm not good at it because I don't do it a lot. I could probably be good at it if I tried. And, you get better at the things you do quite often. But, I never do these things, so they're obviously going to be quite a bit harder. That's the sort of the art section of this video. I think the thing turns out fine, and maybe I'll speak more about that later. I'm going to talk about the Resident Evil series as a whole, I guess, or something like that. I'll just start rambling. I really like Resident Evil 7. I think the opening few hours of it are pretty damn good. Pretty much what I want out of a video game. Maybe not out of a Resident Evil game, but I don't care because I like first-person games over pretty much everything. I like immersion, and I like atmosphere. And I like horror games where there's a lot of tension, a lot of that creepy atmosphere, and a lot of me going, I don't know what's going to happen. And Resident Evil 7 in the beginning has a lot of that. I think a lot of people, I don't know, maybe they have a strong opinion, maybe they don't. I definitely think a lot of people think they think the game changes tone at some point. For me, it changes tone after the, and I guess spoilers or whatever, you don't care. After the Jack Baker chainsaw fight, that's where I'm like, okay, this is a little bit campy now. This is a little bit, not silly, maybe a little silly, but that's sort of like what Resident Evil plays around in, like campiness or something like that. But after that point, I think it loses a lot of the tension. For me, at least, not a huge amount, because after you sort of deal with that, I think you do some other stuff, but you eventually make it to like the old house where you have to deal with like Marguerite and her bugs and shit, which is that's fun actually. I like that part too. That house is creepy, and there's still a lot of stuff going on. She's stalking you around, and then you have to fight her like disgusting bug form. And that's also sort of a campy fight, but it's also like, that's very Resident Evil to me. And my Resident Evil sort of meter starts around like 4 and 5. But Resident Evil 7's fun up to that point. And I guess when you're doing, what's his name? What's his name? Well, I can't remember it now. I'll probably remember it in a little bit. Lucas? I think it's Lucas. When you're doing his part where he's like guiding you through that weird sort of death puzzle or whatever that is, I think that part's interesting, especially where you have to watch that video tape of someone doing it, some random person, and then they solve it and it kills them. And then you have to go in there and figure a way how to solve it without killing yourself, and you just piss them off. I think that's fun. But after that point, it's sort of like Lucas is not scary. He's just sort of cringy and crazy. He's like the neighborhood crackhead. And then just the rest of that game is not... It's sort of sloppy. I don't know. It loses a lot of the tone that I really like, personally. And so it's just a personal thing with me, to be honest. And, but I mean, I still really liked, I really liked the opening part. It's not really Resident Evil for me. I don't know if it is for other people. A lot of people said that Resident Evil 7 was like return to the horror aspect of Resident Evil, and I don't really understand the horror aspect, like the scary, like fear-driven parts of Resident Evil. I don't really understand that because it's sort of like, it's like a generational series, like sort of like Fallout was, where it's like Resident Evil 1, 2, and 3, and I guess Code Veronica, and I think there's some other games there, but those sort of 3-4 games had those tank controls and locked camera angles, and they were really about like inventory management, being sort of a difficult game where it's like the fear response was coming from like, I'm gonna die, I'm gonna lose a bunch of progress, you know, some fucking crazy enemy is just gonna come out and one shot me and I'm scared of just dying. And they play on those sort of angles. And I'm not a huge fan of those games just because of the camera angles and things like that. But when I play them, I like those are fun, and I can understand why someone would find that fun. To me, it's just the actual way you interact with the game. You know, if I was watching someone play it, I would really like it. For me, I entered the series at 4, and 4 is where they gave you a lot more mobility and the ability to control the camera. And I played on the Wii, so I even had more sort of control over my aiming and stuff, because first-person shooters on the Wii weren't actually that bad. Maybe. I don't know. I don't remember, you know. And then there was 5. 5 was where they just... I don't think there was much horror aspect to 5, because it was fun to play. And I've never understood why people hate 6 so much, because 6 is so fun, because it is sort of... It's the parts about 4 and 5 that I think a lot of people hate, because they're like, this isn't Resident Evil, and that's sort of the generational divide. 6 maximizes those really intensely, so it's like, it makes sense why people wouldn't like those as much. I like 6 personally. And 7's where they're like, okay, this is a return to sort of like the really hard inventory management stuff, which I really like. And so I'm happy that with 8, they're returning to that. But story-wise, I don't give a shit. You know, if you look at the lore of Resident Evil, it's a goddamn mess. And it's fun to look at, to be like, wow, there's a lot of stupid shit that's happened and been retconned and shit all over. And for me, it's not something that's mattering. I just like, how does the game play, you know? And I like those types of games. The remakes of 2 and 3 I also really liked. I think some people had some problem with them, especially with 3, because 3, I think they took out some like the sort of content of the original 3 or whatever. I think it's because 3 was sort of slapped together really quickly, because I think they lost money on 2 or something because they took too long to build the engine. I don't know. But I like those games. I never played the original 2 or 3, but when I played the remakes, they're pretty fun. Maybe a little bit too expensive, but, you know. I'm more in the camp of paying a premium price nowadays for just a game you can beat in one evening. You know, I'm really tired of games that are just like, oh, here's 1,000,000 hours of just generic, boring content. I'm like, no, I want fucking 5 hours of just something interesting happening. And they don't really make games like that anymore, because they don't make enough money to justify it. So that's just what you're going to have to deal with. And I like horror games. I like first-person horror games. I like the shitty ones you buy off Steam for like $15 or $20. They're just like some evil thing rushing at you, and like they're boring once you figure out the formula of that. But occasionally you'll find one that has some interesting puzzles, and it's always fun to pick up a new game like that, because when you first pick it up, you don't know the rules, and that's true fear, which I don't get very much anymore. True fear. Because, horror is something that's really subjective and objective at the same time. Something like that fear of the dark, fear of the unknown. Those stem from something more like base instinct. I'm going to get really college professory here for a bit. All humans naturally have aversions to pain and suffering, and ultimately death. Dying is the ultimate failure of any life form. Maybe not past their prime, maybe not past their prime individual, someone who's like gone through the act of procreation, successfully, made some kids, had some offspring, then just dying to natural causes. It's age or whatever. The death of natural causes. Death at a young age, or without having any reproductive success, that's the ultimate failure. Biological entities have the base goal of surviving long enough to reproduce. As such, anything that would interfere with that goal, life needs some kind of aversion to it. Biological stuff like deformities, impotence, short lifespan, low fitness, low desirability, you can sort of put that all to the side, because organisms don't really have that much control over sort of like how they're made up. And what they can control is their actions, or really their reactions to stimuli in their environment. And fear is an instinct that we have that tells us, hey, don't fuck with this. Don't do that. It's an evolutionary defense mechanism. Don't go exploring the jungle at night. Darkness is scary. Something will get you. You'll get killed and eaten. Now, what eats you. It's the tiger, the wolf, the bear, whatever. It's some sort of animal or whatever. And during the day, you can see the tiger chase the stupid people down who don't get in the treetops fast enough. So be afraid of the tiger. It'll eat you. That makes sense, logically. Still, you need to forage for berries and shit. You need to go down to the ground and do stuff, fuck, shit. There's some sort of benefit to going on the ground occasionally. So, logically, again, it makes sense. During the day, you do your ground shit, but you keep a lookout. If you see the tiger, or if you see a shape that looks like the tiger, or you hear a sound that sounds like the tiger, or you even get the feeling that there's a tiger, you make for the fucking tree. It's all logical. But when you were mostly monkey, you didn't really have any logic to use. You just had senses feeding your brain information, and your brain sort of evolved in a way to generate a signal that would trigger some preset response that would often enough result in the maximum tiger avoidance. And that signal is fear. We evolved fear to maximize our potential lifespans and risk avoidance. That's my professional doctoral thesis, just me talking. I think it's interesting, whatever. So you can't see in the dark. So during the night, you hold up in a tree, you huddle around the fire, you find some way to be safe. You don't go out and fuck around, because you'll get eaten by an animal. You'll fucking fall and hit your head because you can't see at night. Don't go fucking around the dark cave because, there's a bear in there. There's some sort of creepy crawly. So, biologically, being afraid of the dark is useful. And I think that's the same pattern for, common phobias, like arachnophobia. Be afraid of things that can bite you and just kill you. A fear of heights, back away from that fucking cliff. You don't know what you're doing. And things like that. It's like my over-analysis of why fear exists in the first place. And I think humans, we've changed too quickly over the past couple hundred years, from going from basically cavemen monkeys to disgusting, filthy idiots that we are. And so we still have fear, but there's not much reason for it anymore. And we've made it into we've commoditized it or something. It's something that we sell now, because a fear response is like an adrenaline rush. It's like you feel it. It's like, oh, I feel that. That's why people go to the scary movie to see the thing rush at the screen and make a loud goddamn noise and its jaw opens up too much. That's why people get on roller coasters. So they're like, whoa, holy shit, what's going to happen? I'm going to die? No, you're not going to die. You know that. But it's your body may not understand that you have these natural fear responses. And you play with those because there's a rush to do so. So when we're trying to explore fear these days in video games, in movies, TV, comic books, or whatever, you have to, I'll just speak specifically on video games. You have to, you can play around with common phobias or whatever, but you have to play around with sort of the core stuff, which is, for me, it's the fear of the unknown. It's not knowing the rules. So when you pick up some random Steam game or whatever, you load it up, you don't know the rules. You don't know, like, if something's going to be chasing you, like, or what it can do. Are you going to get a weapon at some point? Can you defend yourself? Are you going to be able to just blow things up and murder them? Or are you just going to get, like, maybe a bullet, a handgun and a couple of bullets or whatever, and maybe you can fight off one thing, but maybe you fought off the wrong thing, and now there's this thing you have to fight off, and now you're dying or whatever. You have to figure out a way beyond it or whatever. You're trying to figure out, like, oh, is that thing I'm seeing, if I go near it right now, will it kill me? Will it go away? You know, what's that noise? I heard a noise outside this locked door. Like, what's going to happen? And as long as you play around with not giving too much information, that's what invokes the fear response best. That's what makes it sort of stay with you when you don't know what's going to happen. Because, I mean, in a way, dying is like the worst thing that can happen in a horror game. Because it's like, oh, well, I know what happens now. You went through sort of like a fucking scientific experiment of like, okay, what if I let the big spooky scary catch me? Oh, I die, and I go to this game over screen. Well, I mean, what if I run away from it? Oh, I mean, I don't die at that point. Okay, it's pretty good, you know. And you sort of figure out what you're going to do. It sort of cheapens it. So I think a good horror game has to always walk that fine line of like, you can't just let the monster kill the player. Because then they're going to be like, oh, well, they get annoyed or whatever. Some people, that fear sticks with them. You know, like I remember playing Ocarina of Time and getting the Song of Suns, the Sun Songs or whatever, was always a massive ordeal to me because you have to go down to that grave and there's the Redeads down there. And the Redeads were massively scary to me because they would look at you, they would do an actually horrifying scream. Poor little Link couldn't fucking move and they would just walk towards him really slowly. And I'm sitting there with the controller fucking shaking because it's like, oh shit, what's it going to do? And then one actually got me once and it fucking wraps around you, bites your neck. I'm screaming, trying to get it the fuck off me, pushing every button on the controller, and it kills me. So from that point on, I didn't want to do it. Like I would have to figure out, how am I going to do this? When am I going to do this? And you know, and I refused to engage at that point with the enemies, and so I didn't figure out like, oh, I mean, you know, you can just do this, you know, you can exploit their AI or whatever. And I think that may be just something from like being young or something, you know, just being a kid and you don't know to sort of play around with the AI and figure out what's going to do. So, I mean, that's why a lot of horror games, I think, rely on jump scares and things like that. It's really hard to sort of stick with you. It's something that's hard. So that's why I don't particularly mind when games don't do it well, or if they sort of like only do it a little bit. You know, because like with the Resident Evil series, I like having a gun and I like killing things and I like having to manage my inventory and, you know, not really know if like, oh, do I need to kill this thing now, or should I just run past it? And it's like action horror, I think, is one that it's a genre that I think people shit on too much because it's like, oh, it's not real horror, I'm not scared. It's like, but there's tension, right? You know, like you can't blow all your ammo here, you got to hit those shots. It's a different way to play around with it. I think people shit on it too much. But anyways, I'm out of time here. I hope Resident Evil 8's good. I think it will be because I liked Resident Evil 7 so much. There'll probably be a few mistakes here and there, but, what are you going to do? They're going to make the game they make, and I can only play it and, enjoy it the best I can. I'm not going to sit there and pout because the game's not going to be scary or something like that, Not that I'm particularly going to be scared of some vampire with massive mommy milkers chasing me down. I can hear the clap or whatever thick memes, horniness, whatever. The drawing is fine. I like it. You can see I'm playing around with that geometric cell shading again. I like it. I like the color variation again there, and it's fun to just sit around and play with what you can make. You can make really dramatic movements and then shove them down, put them at high saturations on those layers, and make some interesting stuff. I really want to play around with it a little bit more. And I like how her face turned out. It's a little bit messy. I think I wanted to do another pass of line art, really tie some stuff down. But as I was working on that final line art layer, I started getting some really nice variation in sort of like really dark, thick areas and some lighter strokes, and some places were messy and some places were tight. So I was like, this is good enough, I like it. So, I'm happy with the drawing. I hope everyone else is too, I made her boobies real big, so everyone should enjoy that. And thanks for watching the show. I have links to my Patreons and things everywhere and all my galleries and stuff. I'm got some more. Hopefully, I'm going to be doing these things more monthly instead of waiting to the very end of the month and having to trickle over. I've let that happen with other projects I've done, and it does really slow down. I've got some stuff planned for this month. In particular, one thing that I'm going to be working on basically as soon as I finish this, and I'm going to do a mad rush to get it done this week. And, it's a hard release date of like a week from now, basically. And we'll see what comes of that. Hopefully everyone will like that. I have another like long animation I'm working on. It's been hard to do that and while doing other things, but I'm basically setting aside this month to do work on shit. So I should have a lot more content for everyone to look at and enjoy and judge me on and say it's shit. And I'm like, yeah, it's shit, but I'm trying. But anyway, thanks for watching, everyone. Subscribe if you want to. Follow the links to my other galleries and my Patreon. Subscribe there. I really appreciate it. But until next time, guys, I'll see you then. Goodbye.